So Senator Bill Hagerty is a Republican out of Tennessee, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And sir, good morning to you. Thank you for your time from the Hill.
Good morning, Bill.
A year ago, when President Biden made this speech, it was 18 days later when October 7th erupted. And so, I mean, just think about those events and how they've changed so many things since then. Wall Street Journal, here we go. It is a far more dangerous world than Mr. Biden inherited, and far less congenial for U.S. interests, human freedom, and democracy. Authoritarians have advanced on his watch in every part of the world: Europe, Asia, Pacific, the Middle East, Africa, and even the Americas, end quote. What's he say about that today?
Well, it's exactly right. It's only worse. The Biden-Harris administration has been a complete disaster from a national security standpoint, and there is no part of the world that is safer than when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris came into office. President Trump delivered relative peace around the world. What happens? This administration comes in and creates an enormous national security disaster at our southern border. Now 10 million people, we have no idea who they are. More than 10 million have come into our country. If you think about what happened in the Middle East, the immediate appeasement approach that they took to Iran, they basically stopped enforcing all of the sanctions that President Trump had imposed with the maximum security campaign. Iran was immediately enriched, and we saw by May of 2021, after Biden and Harris had come into office, the 11-day war from Gaza into Israel. There's been nothing but unrest from the Middle East. If you think about what happened with Ukraine and Russia, that would have only been precipitated after the massive failure of Joe Biden handing over Afghanistan to the Taliban, causing 13 American service members to lose their lives, leaving thousands of Americans behind, leaving billions of dollars of equipment behind to arm the Taliban and whomever else. The Far East, everything has become far less safe. If you think about the incursions of the PLA in the Taiwan Strait, North Korea back at it again. The entire world is on fire, and you can thank the man that's going to be speaking at the UN General Assembly today for that.
And you just mentioned several of the crises that are on the president's plate. Let's just show here. Call for number 3 gives you all of the regions that you were talking about, from the Middle East to China, and of course our own border crisis and the Iran nuclear threat. And yesterday, it was announced that the administration will be possibly deploying troops into the combat zone that Nate Foy and Rich Edson were just talking about. Let's listen to Kamala Harris at the debate, what she said about the U.S. and combat.
As of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century.
And so now you have a situation 6 weeks before the election that, one, it wasn't true before during the debate and deserved a fact check, but two, it's certainly not true now.
No, you're exactly right. It's not true. It wasn't true then. It's certainly not true now. That debate was a complete disgrace, 3-on-1, and something that they just step back and say the very basic question: is the world, certainly is the United States, better off today than it was when President Trump was in office? And the answer, both from a world stage perspective as well as here in the United States, is no. President Trump had us in a far better place, both globally and certainly here in the United States of America.
So Iran's president's here as well. He's new to the job, a couple months on that job. He did an interview with NBC and said this about wanting peace and not conflict.
We want to move in a more peaceful, more stable world. We don't seek war, but we will defend ourselves.
You won't rule out retaliating?
No, we have said that we will respond in a manner of our choosing.
What is he talking about? Iran backs Hamas. Iran backs Hezbollah. And shortly after October 7th of last year, Hezbollah fired 150 missiles into Israel as a sign of solidarity with Hamas after they went into southern Israel and took, how many, 150 people captive. What is he talking
about?
You're exactly
right. It's the two-faced approach of Iran. And the Biden-Harris administration is either too naive or they just bought into this situation. Iran is the greatest state sponsor of terror. President Trump had brought Iran to its knees. Iran was broke under the Trump administration. I worked hard myself when I served in the Trump administration to impose sanctions on Iran, to get our partners and allies to stop buying Iranian crude. We brought them to their knees financially. They were unable to fund Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. If you think about what we were able to achieve, we were able to move our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. We were able to acknowledge Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. People said that could never be done without war. We took out Soleimani and al-Baghdadi. We even entered the Abraham Accords. All of this was possible because President Trump had the wisdom and the foresight to impose maximum pressure on the Iranian regime that clearly is seeking to obtain a nuclear weapon, that clearly funds all of this terror. And the Biden administration, the Harris administration steps right back in immediately and starts to fund them. Now they've got well over $100 billion of funds, thanks to what this administration has allowed them to do. And they're using those funds to instill terror throughout the Middle East and perhaps around the world.
Senator Hagerty, thank you for joining us this morning, kicking off our coverage.
High stakes today.
Thank you
We'll
both.
be watching. Thank you, Senator.